You're listening to the tale of two podcasters from the 2007 RAB TGO Challenge, brought to you by theoutdoorsStation.co.uk.
This podcast is just one of a special series produced from a wealth of recordings made in May 2007 by two backpackers, Andy Howell and me, Bob Cartwright, as we made our way via two different routes from the west to the east coast of Scotland as part of the 2007 RAB TGO Challenge.
Here at RAB, we're pleased to be involved in the TGO Challenge, which is the perfect testing ground for our clothing and sleeping bags. RAB has a Scottish heritage and over 25 years' experience of making gear that performs in the varied weather of the Highlands, as well as gear for the highest peaks in the Himalaya.
Co-sponsors TGO, the Great Outdoors magazine, have been behind this May event since its inception in 1980. The framework and principle is totally unique. It isn't a race or a competition of any kind. The objective is to foster good fellowship amongst walkers within the framework of a challenging 200-mile expedition. The start consists of a series of sign-out locations on the west coast, from Torridon in the north down to Ardrishaig in the south. Each challenger, solo, couple or group makes their way via a high route, a low route or a mixture of the two across Scotland to finish anywhere between Arbroath and Fraserburgh on the east coast. There's a set 2-week window to do this in, and each participant submits their route for inspection prior to departure for safety and advice reasons. The places, however, are limited to 300, and details about the event, entry forms, past stories and photographs can be found in the October issue of TGO magazine and on their website. Each participant makes the challenge as easy or as hard as they wish. The extremes can be a remote high route, crossing wild country and not seeing another soul for days on end. Or a route which takes in the many social events, perhaps not camping at all and just using established accommodation all the way. Most people do a mixture of the two in different forms. This year I started with my wife Rose in the beautiful village of Plockton, and Andy Howell with his partner Kate started from Strathcarron. We both carried recorders with us to capture our audio diaries and conversations which took place with other walkers as well as locals as we made our way to the east coast. Yes, this is the tale and adventures of two podcasters.
Well, Wednesday morning, and we're at Glen Truim campsite, another fine campsite, just down the road from the Monaghliath Arms in Laggan, and we've broken to another glorious sunny day, although I gather that rain is forecast for later. Quite a gentle day yesterday, 12 miles of gentle ambling from Garver Bridge through to Laggan. A couple of hours and a good lunch at the pub, a visit to Laggan stores to stock up on some fresh food, and then a couple of hours wander down a lovely little gentle little country lane to this beautiful campsite. Kate, did you enjoy yesterday?
Yeah, it was really nice having lunch with lots of other people at the Monaghliath Arms, and I think as I listened to the various challenge stories and bits of challenge folklore, as it were, I sort of began to realise a bit more about the social side of the whole experience. Up until now I've been very focused just on getting through each day and, having to do these quite long, difficult days. But yesterday we had a bit more time and it was easier to be a bit more sociable and to interact with people a bit more, and that was enjoyable.
And how's the knee?
The knee is not bad, but not great. I bought some support bandage at the Laggan stores yesterday, and I'm going to strap it up today. It's not. I mean, it's going to be all right, but I'm glad that we've decided to change our route. I wouldn't really want to do another pass like the Cotterill knee-knackering pass that we did the day before yesterday.
And although we're having to change the route, I mean, this is one of the things about long cross-country routes like the Challenge. You have to have the ability to be flexible or to improvise to some extent. We heard already of a couple of people who've dropped out at Monaghliath Mountains, and one including Margaret, who was obviously in some severe back pain, and she'd struggled heroically over the Cotterill Pass, but there doesn't seem much point in really putting your body through absolute murder.
Well, the walk is there to be done again, and you know, it's insane to take yourself beyond your limits. So I think the people even people who've got this far have done incredibly well, and I think that's what needs to be remembered, is that, you know, it is it's not an easy thing to do. So people who manage to make it each day is well done. But I think I'm fine to go on. I just need to be a little bit careful, and we just need to be able to have that flexibility and that adaptability, so that so that I don't do myself any permanent damage.
Okay, so we'll take a slower, lower, more gentle route through Glen Feshie. In no way is it an inferior route, because it's absolutely beautiful, and we should still arrive in Braemar in a couple of days' time for our day off, and then see how the knees, and maybe if it's doing okay, we can hit Jock's Road for the last bit of highland before we start our descent into Stonehaven.
While Andy and Kate were setting off from Laggan to the south of the Monaghliaths, Rose and I had taken the early morning ferry with a handful of other challengers across a very still and tranquil Loch Ness from Drumnadrochit on the west, with a view to walking across the tops to Aviemore. A couple of other challengers, also on the boat, Martin Banfield and Ian Cotterill, made for good company as we made our way via Errogie into the foothills on another very fine morning.
So it's your first challenge, Martin. Here we are, we just crossed Loch Ness. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great, thank you very much.
How's the trip been for you now? And tell us where you started and so on.
Started at Strathcarron, gone reasonably high level, been at 4 Corbetts and a Munro, over to Loch Monar, over to Cannock, and through the Balmacan forest to Drum. All very enjoyable.
And has it been fairly sociable, or have you sort of been fairly solitary on your route, do you think?
It's very sociable just now, but it's been fairly solitary. I've met 3 people up to today. 2 of those were for 5 minutes. So I spent half a day with Alan Kay, which was very pleasant. Apart from that, I've been more or less on my own.
And has it been a challenge, and has it been sort of what you were expecting it to be as regards a backpacking trip?
Yes, but because of the good weather, it's not been as challenging as it would have obviously been if the weather had been inclement. Some of the days would have been quite tough if the cloud had been down, but as it was, they were relatively easy. I've been ahead of schedule all the time.
Well, that's interesting, that, because we've had a few moments where the weather's certainly just been irritating because it's so changeable, and the range has affected everything we've done, and we've changed our route thinking that weather was going to be pretty rough. But it sounds like you've been fairly lucky.
Yep, I've been very lucky. The putting on and off of waterproofs occasionally isn't any great hardship, really. With the cloud level up at anywhere between 800 and 1100 metres, it's been fine.
Now you're travelling on your own. I know you've got one of the single skin tents there. Have you found the camping? Have you found it to be fairly easy to find a spot, and the actual camping itself being quite pleasurable?
The Phoenix Freerunner is a classic tent which pitches on virtually no area at all, so finding a camping spot is absolutely no problem. It was always the tent that had to go last when a group of us backpack, and we're all looking for spots in the same area. Unfortunately, I was always relegated to last because my tent will go anywhere.
But have you actually found the quality of the camping spots that you've chosen to be good?
They've been excellent, and I seem to have chosen better than some as far as the tick situation is concerned. I haven't encountered any.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been very lucky on that score.
Yeah, there's sign of deer everywhere I've been. I've just tried to pitch in places where there's a bit less sign of deer.
Now, you do a fair amount of walking in the Pyrenees and so on, I understand. Is this the first time you've done a traverse of Scotland?
Yes, it's the first traverse of Scotland I've done, although I've done quite a lot of long weekend backpacking trips in Scotland, so I'm quite familiar with
what it can offer.
Yeah, what it can offer, yeah.
Yeah, and I think just before the challenge started, were you in Ireland, did you say?
No, I was on the Isle of Rum.
Rum.
That was in the hostel though. That was just a longer range trip which included the traverse of the Coolin of Rum, which was very nice.
So you haven't really sort of left suburbia, as it were, and hit the trail for the first time. You're actually already warmed up by your trip to Rum.
Yes, and various other trips as well. Just try and keep out and about as best you can, you know, while you've got the energy.
So what's the finishing route then from here?
Over to Aviemore, then across to Ballater, through the Cairngorms, and then Mount Keane and that range across to Fugueside and Stonehaven. So I planned the route some time ago. It's quite a surprise every day to get the route cards out and see where I'm going. Very pleasant surprise sometimes, and it seems to be everything that I thought it would be. It's a nice route.
Just finally, this is your first time doing this, but obviously you're very experienced in walking generally. Any advice you'd give to people who are considering doing it for the first time?
Well, the advice I gave to Darren when I left him at Stirling was just know where you are at all times. I thought that was the most important advice to give to him. So just know where you are at all times. And
we haven't heard from him since, have we?
We haven't heard from him since, but I don't know whether he took my advice or not. But he must be around, because he's not immediately replying as if he was at home.
I'm going up to Dalbeg, the Old Bothy, which I'll camp beside.
And when you go to the bothies generally, do you just use them to cook in and camp outside?
Well, this is an old ruined bothy, so you can't stay in it. I tend not to stay in many bothies. I tend generally to camp.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, bothies are fine, but I still tend to find them a bit cold, a bit damp generally, and quite a few of them unfortunately are vandalised nowadays.
Yeah, that's a real shame, isn't it? You'd think people have more respect for the bothies generally.
I mean, I've tended to find that the ones that are more remote are less vandalised. It's the ones that are easy to get to.
Yeah. And what about your route this year? Where have you started from? Because first of all, how many crossings have you actually done there?
This is it'll be my 6th.
And have you done them consecutively?
No, I missed out. I started the first one in 1999, and then my next one was 2003, and every year since then.
So is it true that you, like everybody else, have just got hooked on it?
Yeah, unfortunately I'm addicted, yep.
And whereabouts have you started this year?
I started in Torridon, and had a great crossing, done a few hills on the way. It's been really good.
I think you said at some stage you had some sleet?
I had a couple of snow showers, yes, and one thing that I can only describe as a mini blizzard. Snow and in the cloud and high wind. It was interesting.
Whereabouts have you started from before then, if it's your 6th year?
Twice from Shielbridge, once from Oban, once from Dorney, and once from Arasaig.
And what's Oban like to start from? Because I would have thought that'd be fairly hard to get away onto the tracks.
Well, when I started I took a ferry across to Lismore and walked the length of Lismore, and then took a ferry to Portappen and then headed over into Glenetiv.
I would have thought that would be quite an attractive way to start.
It's quite nice. I mean, quite a bit of road on the first day, but lovely scenery.
Do you find that the official start, as soon as you've had the official start, you actually want to get off-road and get going as soon as possible.
Yeah, I don't like road walking. I find road walking, especially with a full pack, hard on the feet. So I try to avoid it wherever possible.
Now, I see you got a good sized pack there. Are you sort of one of the lightweight brigade, one of the new people that want to try and strip the weight down? Or are you happy with what you've had for years?
A bit of both. When I replace anything, I always try and replace it with something lighter. I always look and make sure I'm not taking excess stuff. So, for instance, for my top half of my body, I only have 3 items of clothing. So my Paramo jacket, a Berghaus Ecstatic shirt and a Paramo shirt. I find that does me any weather conditions whatsoever. So, I mean, anybody who doesn't want to go lighter is daft. Because obviously the less you carry the better. But I feel that it's not always essential to go for the lightest item. If you can get something that might be fractionally heavier, that will do the job of 2 items. You know, it's the overall weight you have to be looking at, not the weight of individual items.
Absolutely. And what about the bottom half then?
Main thing I walk in is just a pair of Paramo trousers, the waterproofs, which are lined and they've got zips so you can ventilate them. I find them great.
So you're not carrying any sort of spare dry set of clothes at all?
Well, I carry the Paramo shirt. I tend to carry unless it's very cold, and I carry a pair of trousers. Quite simply because when you camp at the end of the night, I like to get into something dry.
Yeah. And talking about camping, what's your tent of choice?
I use a Hillyberg Acto, which I've had for about 12 years, and great wee tent.
Yes, it certainly seems to be the tent of the challenge, doesn't it?
I think there's not much better if you're going high. There are other very good tents for valley camping which are lighter, but if you're doing tops like I do and doing the odd high camp, then I don't think you can beat it really.
And your sleeping system, if you're camping high, have you got something that gives you plenty of insulation?
Yeah, I use rather than go for a very heavyweight sleeping bag, I've gone for one of the down-filled sleeping mats, which means that I get away with using a far lighter bag. I find overall that saves me a good deal more weight.
So is that an X-bed sleeping mat then?
Yeah.
And so the sleeping bags are what?
It's an ME, it's down to 0 degrees rated, which I find is fine. I've had ice inside and outside the tent and still be fine with it, you know.
Oh, so apart from that then, I suppose it's just the cooking gear, or you keep that to a minimum as well?
Well, I still use a petrol stove, which is probably heavier than the latest ones, but something that I'm used to and I really like. But titanium pans, or rather one titanium pan, and one of the MSR titanium kettles which I use as a mug.
Right.
And that's basically it for cooking gear. Titanium spoon, knife, and other essentials like camera equipment and whiskey.
Well, I say that's after that you're actually onto the luxury and practical items like cameras and so on. I see you carrying an SLR camera.
Yep.
Obviously, you're getting fantastic results from that. So, very much look forward to seeing those in perhaps TGO magazine.
You never know. You never know. See what they say.
Well, I wish you safe walking, and I'll perhaps bump into you in Montrose, if not before.
I've no doubt we'll bump into each other sometime. Okay, thanks.
It's now 8 o'clock on Wednesday evening, and we've had a very successful day. We've finally arrived at where we intended to camp in good time. We got here around 6 o'clock-ish. Had the ferry this morning with Gordon across to Inverferrigeg, and a bit of a road walk for about 3 miles up to Errogie, and then we started to hit the hills and come across the Monaghliaths, which have a certain reputation, and our experience of them isn't brilliant because it's just hard going. But it wasn't too bad actually. There was a decent Land Rover track most of the way that we came, with a lunch hut, or a hut at the top of it, which actually proved to be, we arrived at just the right time, where we were just feeling a bit low and needed a top of food. And then we came over the top, and thankfully the weather forecast, which was once again, I can't say wrong, but didn't actually get to us. It didn't really rain, so it wasn't particularly boggy underfoot, and there were peat hags and stuff, but nothing that we couldn't really stride through. Just a few we had to avoid. Before dropping down to the River Findorn and going along to, now let's see if I can pronounce this right, Coednascallan, I think, where there's a lovely camping spot, and obviously it's the edge of or part of a very nice estate, because the estate buildings that we passed on the way were very well kept and looked after, so I presume they entertain the hunting, shooting, fishing brigade out here in fine style. Tomorrow we're beetling off fairly early to Aviemore, and where Rose has got to catch a train back on Friday morning, first thing, at 7 o'clock. So today is her last night camping, and so we set the tent up in a lovely spot by the river. Grey cloud, but still not raining, which is the main thing. Feeling fairly pleasant, and we're just sitting here reminiscing the week, really. So, how's it been for you?
I've really enjoyed it, actually. It's been great. Miss not doing any really big tops this year so far, and obviously going to miss out on the Cairngorms, which had snow on them as we came over. We could see them in the distance, and they looked great. But nice walk today, in company, and chatting as we went, and got down into the valleys, and lapwings are around, and on the top there were quite a few grouse, weren't there? So yeah,
seen several herds of deer fairly close up as well.
Quite a lot of deer as well. Yeah, so.
Which we seem to have, well, I seem to have been bitten to death by ticks this year. I hope none of which are going to be infectious, because some of them came out clean, but there are a handful that didn't come out clean, sadly. And so I hope there's going to be no nasties there. But that's actually put a bit of a downer on the walking through the heather and things, because obviously all you're doing now is being continually aware that there could be some bugs in there that's somehow getting into the clothing. But Rose came to the conclusion that the night that we camped down at, where was it?
Tomic, I think it was. Tomic.
Near Tomic. We saw signs of badgers, and just wondering whether the badgers had ticks, and we picked them up there rather than sort of from deer or sheep. Which would tie in, actually. We got ticks all over the place.
Well, I was going to say that was the night that we actually saw some in the tent before they got to us.
Yeah, ticks. Lots of small bugs running around the tent, which could be ticks, but we're assuming they were.
I'm pretty sure they were. I think so.
So tonight we have a quick inspection, and if we're tick-free, then we'll be happy. That would be quite nice. So what's been your best day, then?
I don't know, really. I mean, every day's had something to make it special, apart from as well as our anniversary. So no, I think every day's had something, whether it's been a view or a climb or spotting some wildlife, or I think every day.
Oh, the ferry ride this morning was quite nice.
That was really nice, and Gordon certainly had some interesting facts to tell us about Loch Ness as he went across.
Yeah, he's quite a character, isn't he?
How many whiskey bottles would it fill?
3 trillion.
Oh, I thought you'd remember that one.
Yeah. And any comments on gear? This will probably be your last chance to talk about gear, really, from a female perspective, all the stuff that you've had.
I like my new jade pack, the Gregory, and I've sort of worn it for the best part of a week. My only slight disappointment, but that's just personal, is that they've apparently did a survey and found that most women said they preferred bottles to platypus, and I tend to use a hosier system. And so they've altered the back pocket, which used to be very, last year on the Z pack was very deep, and I could put all my wet weather gear in there just to pull out. Because they styled it, especially for women this year, they've sort of used some of that space up for bottles, which I found a bit frustrating.
To describe that a bit more, perhaps what it is 2 water bottle pockets either side of the rucksack, on the pocket that goes all the way around it.
So it sort of impinges on the space, doesn't it?
Cut the actual size of the pocket down, the big pocket down. Although you can still get stuff in there, you can't get obviously as much, or at least not as deep.
And I can't sort of get my hands in them easily to I sort of could just about stuff a hat in one of them, and my glasses in the other, but it's not that brilliant.
No. But apart from that, everything else has been pretty much the same as last year almost, hasn't it?
Yeah. Everything's sort of performed well.
As you'd want it
to.
to.
As I say, the only frustration I think was with my waterproof trousers, and as before, the only piece of gear I haven't used is my shorts, sunglasses and suntan lotion.
Although
I live in hope.
It was sunny the other day.
It was sunny, but not as sufficient to put my shorts on.
The cooking gear's worked out okay as well, interesting, because this is all going tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
So the jet boil is still using a 100 cart, and we've used that every day, not for all meals and drinks, but certainly in companionship with the other one. So I say a 100 cart would probably last a week on the challenge. Or was that my hot chocolate? Thanks. Which is interesting. The peak ignition stove, reliable as ever, has done the job beautifully.
Great, hasn't it?
And we've gone through half a 250, I suppose, in some respects. 250 gas stove, because we're working the two stoves together.
Two-light mugs been good.
Titanium
mugs.
As always, the
Sporks.
MSR ones have been good. Spork's been good.
And I have to say, your folding sport would have fitted better in my pack than I kept the straight one, which is great and lovely. But in fact, where I've been keeping it, if it had been a folding one, it would have tucked down better.
The cosy kit stuff has been very good indeed, hasn't it? We're bringing food to the boil, dehydrated food to the boil, and then whacking the cosy kit straight on it, or putting it into the cosy kit, and leaving it for 10 or 15 minutes while we've done something else, and that really has
really well.
Been very effective. It's as good as simmering the food, which has brought it back. Food's been good, the dehydrated food. We split the parcels up this year to make it a bit easier. But we've had, we've had cauliflower cheese, we've had pasta, we've had curry, we've had chicken sasseur. Anything else we've dehydrated? We've had brittle.
Yes.
Fruit brittle.
And just dried fruit as well we've done, and all sorts of bits and bobs, haven't we?
Yeah, and we also did, I did...
your magic mix.
We did, yes, a magic mix. So we had some couscous, and then, because couscous can get a bit boring, I dried a whole pile of chilies and mushrooms and olives and various bits and bobs. So I've just thrown that in and then popped the pop cosy in, and that's worked well. Sleeping bags, you been warm enough?
Yeah, no, pretty good. The one night I was a bit cold, but I just pulled my down jacket in till I warmed up again. But we've had ice on the tent. There's been a couple of quite...
Yeah, it has been
quite
sub-zero.
cold nights.
Yeah, and the tent's been good as well. The light wave.
It's worked really well.
And we're lying here now, staring out of the mountains. Yeah. There's certainly plenty of space in the vestibule area of the tent for cooking and bags and boots and so on. So we're not without tripping over stuff. So all in all, that's performed well. So I've just got to take you across the hills tomorrow then to Aviemore.
Yeah.
And then put you on the train.
Yeah, just a couple of the observations I've made. Sort of at the coast, the gorse has been out in flower, and it was absolutely brilliant. Egg yolk yellow, wasn't it? All over the place, and at the broom in some places. That's really nice, and all the fern, all the brackens coming through, and I just love the way it unfolds and it sort of uncurls. It's so delicate. And then once you get in the mountains, you've sort of got all the lichens and. As I say, trying to identify more each year I come. With the Caledonian fern is the one I recognise now, which is sort of skeletal, very delicate and very pretty. And Butterworth.
That book, Hostile Habitats,
excellent.
Which we've left at home, but is
I think we mentioned that before, didn't we?
Did we? We bought it at Christmas time. It's a fantastic book. It really is. It's a shame there's not a pocket version, because there's so much to see and learn as you go through the environment. It'd be really worth knowing that.
The only other observation I mentioned to you was pointed out to Bob that there's lots of places that you walk in Scotland, it's semi-rural, by in between sort of villages sometimes that you notice there's raspberry canes planted. And I remember talking to Lorraine McCall at the end of last challenge and saying, oh, that's unusual. And she was saying, well, actually, all over different bits of Scotland you'll find that. So I was pointing that out to Bob and saying, come autumn, that must be lovely just to be wandering down some of these lovely quiet lanes and helping yourself to raspberries as well as blackberries, which are there. So obviously being planted at some point and form a natural sort of hedgeway, but the fact that it's practical at the same time.
Oh, well, move the challenge to autumn so we have fresh fruit. Yeah?
Help ourselves.
So that's about it for us tonight. Better sort out and do our domestic duties and clean all the pots and pans. And enjoy my hot chocolate, which is sitting in front of me. And see Rose across the mountains tomorrow. We'll have a few quick pieces tomorrow. I might catch up with somebody if they're in the youth hostel, because we're going to Aviemore Youth Hostel tomorrow night. And then I'm putting you on the train for Friday morning to send you back. Go back
to
woman.
work. Go back to the office.
Go back to office. And I'm changing everything. I'm changing the cooking system over to the white box stove. And I'm changing the tent over to a tarp tent, a Go Light Hut 2, and a bivvy bag. And I'm hoping I'm not going to get covered in ticks by the time I get back home.
Indeed. I'll have the tweezers ready.
Oh, you say the nicest things. So that's about it from us tonight, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow.
Concludes this part of The Tale of Two Podcasters from the 2007 RAB TGO Challenge, brought to you by theoutdoorsStation.co.uk.